Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Sean. So when I ask people if they enjoy traveling or living in Korea, they often say that they love it.
The people in Korea are so generous and kind.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm gonna come back here for sure, 100%.
Wow, you really had a good experience.
Yeah, and I'm still wanna experience some more in the short time that I do have in here.
Can you see yourself visiting here on vacation?
I am really impressed with Korea, and it's quite a beautiful country, so when I have the opportunity again, of course. Korea is a really enjoyable place to have some vacation with your friends.
I just love it.
Everyone's so put together, extreme.
Together.
Yeah.
Stylish.
Everyone's dressed well. Everyone's polite. Everyone seems cool. I love it. Yeah.
However, if I ask them the question if they would like to stay here in Korea long term, their answers often change.
I think it's really interesting to come here and live here, but not for living for a long time.
Sure.
For 5 months, it's okay.
I don't think I would stay in Korea long term, to be honest, because the work environment and a lot of political and social issues that I think are a bit better in Switzerland, for example, or of course other countries. I do plan to spend a few years, but not forever.
I think if you're Korean and you are living a daily life as a company worker, it could be really stressful because the mentality here for work is really hard and everyone is working all day. And
Sure. You wouldn't want to do that.
even in France, I would not do that, but here it will be even harder.
A lot of people often mention work culture as the big reason why they don't want to live here long term. So it got me curious because I've never worked in a company. I've only worked in English academies and now I'm running my own business. What is it actually like working in Korea? Is it as bad as people say it is? Is it getting better? What are the pros? What are the cons? How does it compare to other countries? So I found some foreigners who have lived here in South Korea for a long time and who have worked in Korean companies. First, let's address the elephant in the room.
Hey, how's it going? What's your name? Where are you from?
I'm Karina. I'm from Russia, from Siberia.
So a lot of people say it's tough to work in Korea. Do you agree?
The first workplace was a little bit hard because I have had to work a lot.
Yeah.
From 11 a.m. till about 10 p.m. Almost every day, 6 days of week.
That's a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it was really hard. And it was the work in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So,
Cooking.
yeah, cooking. So it was hot and a lot of guests.
Yeah.
So you need to work all the time.
My name is Sam. I'm from Canada. I work in corporate sales. I've been doing that since I got here. And the culture here, it's more of a very cohesive. You got to work as a cohesive unit. So, for example, in Korea, whenever we go on a business trip, even after work, you're expected to move with the group, go for dinner with the group, and you don't really have time for yourself. For me, it still annoys me quite a lot. Another thing is, I guess there's a very strict hierarchy. They emphasize the value of a much more strict hierarchy here. Anybody that's a senior level than you, you're expected to answer to them unquestionably. In short, I think it depends on the company, but I think that general cultural difference still remains.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm from the United States.
I wonder, do you have any experience working in a Korean company here?
Yeah, it was an architecture company, and I was there working as an interior designer.
A lot of people think that working in Korea is scary. Or it's a negative association.
It's kind of, in a way, true, but in a way, just a stereotype. We did have to have nunchi with the boss.
You did.
Yes, and to some extent, but it wasn't this oppressive type of work culture. When the boss comes to the office, because the boss will be out having meetings and stuff. When he's coming to the office, it's kind of everyone passes down that boss is coming or the boss is here.
Tuck your shirt in.
And everyone
Make your hair
kind of
look nice.
we're kind of laid back, working, and then suddenly it's I'm working so hard, kind of sit up straight and look like you're working hard. It's that unspoken thing where you have to look like you're hard at work, even if you were kind of taking it easy for a little bit. So Yeah.
For the most part, I think there's less work-life balance in Korean work life. The current company that I work for right now is actually, I would say it's more on the lax side. But the other company that I worked for when I first came here, there were a lot of people that would stay extra late, whether because they had a lot of work that had to be done within a certain time frame, or a lot of the times, from what I've seen, they're just staying there because the boss hasn't left or something. They don't want to be seen as the first person to leave and whatnot.
For example, my husband is working as an accountant. Can be hard, for example, if you have 회식, when you go outside for eating out with your colleagues, you have to drink almost all the time.
And still, does he have to?
Yeah, almost all the time you need to go and drink and eat some kogi, then you go to drink somewhere else, or maybe 노래방.
In my case, I was always kind of scared to take like sick days because I know someone would have to cover for me.
We would have to take turns taking vacation days off, especially when my team only had 2 people that included me. Both of us couldn't be out of the office, so we had to take turns, and I was kind of a little hesitant to take a day off because I would think, oh, the other people at work might look down on me.
As you can see, there is a stereotype that Korean work culture is intense. Long hours, high pressure, and not always the best work-life balance. Some people even say it's one of the reasons why the birth rate is so low. It is pretty common knowledge that South Koreans work more than most other people in the world. Although the legal maximum is 40 hours before overtime, employees often hit 45 to 50 hours or more due to cultural pressure, weak enforcement, and voluntary overtime. Whereas in the US, where I'm from, it's more common to see 34 to 38-hour work weeks. Working too much, living expenses are too high, and salaries aren't the highest in the world. But I noticed something interesting. It feels like things are slowly changing. Younger generations seem to be shifting more towards independence. Less 회식, less 노래방, more work-life balance.
I think the culture has changed because even at my previous company, actually we didn't do any drinking 회식 at all. If there was a 회식, like it was very rare. At my current company, I guess we have 회식 maybe once every several months, maybe during like a workshop or something. So we just go for barbecue, lots of drinking of course, but you're not expected to drink.
It depends on people what work there. A lot of young generation now is very different than the old generation. If you're lucky, there are a lot of young people near you at your workplace, it can be okay.
So the generation difference.
Of course, because the old generation is still, they are tough with the rules.
I've heard that the 회식 culture is changing a bit to like just watching a movie together, or just having dinner together, or playing a board game together.
Yeah, it can be like this, but still it's not that all the time.
But it's not all bad. Here are some things that foreigners enjoy about working in Korea.
What do you admire about Korean working culture?
Well, I'm actually a results-oriented person, and Korean work culture is very results-oriented. It could be a bad thing sometimes because like they're too like absorbed with the result instead of kind of the process. But I think it's good that they're like quick to produce a lot in a short amount of time. I admire that.
So by any means necessary, get the result.
Yeah, just get some result. It could be a strong point. It could be a weakness too, but like I think I've learned from it at least some.
Maybe it's a little bit better than in Russia that you can meet your colleagues a little bit more. Like this 회식 can be positive and negative too. For example, in Russia, you don't have a lot of such experience when you go out with your colleagues. But in Korea, it's a little bit more, and it can be funny.
Yeah, sometimes, right?
Sometimes, of course, sometimes.
So you can get closer with your coworkers here.
Yeah.
The people that I work with, especially people on the same team as I feel like we build a stronger, a much closer bond with one another as opposed to a group in Canada. I'm actually still friends with several colleagues from my previous job as well too, because we worked together. We obviously kept it very business.
You went to war together.
We went to war together, but we also developed a nice personable bond as well too.
And now I have a bonus clip that I want to show you guys. It focuses on a big cultural difference when working in Korea versus working in the West.
I'm here today with my friend Tom.
Hi, my name is Tom. I have been doing mergers and acquisitions, or M&A, or in Korean they call it 인수합병, for over 20 years. Growing up in the US, you are encouraged to debate or argue a point in class from elementary all the way to high school, college, right? So the act of having a polite or sometimes just having a rather aggressive debate is something that you're not afraid of because you've been doing it most of your life. But I found that that type of debate culture doesn't exist in Korea. So elementary school through college, no professor or teacher encourages their kids to debate and argue. So what I found is that in meetings in Korea, somebody senior says something, or maybe somebody says something once or twice to kind of slightly politely maybe kind of disagree, but if it's not going anywhere, depending on whoever's more senior, everybody else kind of aligns themselves to the senior person because they don't want to see the debate or they don't want to have a debate, right? Or if they're all of like similar age or similar hierarchical position, it can get into a shouting match and get really aggressive. It's much more difficult to have a constructive debate in Korea. It's much more difficult to have a constructive contrarian thought against the most senior person in the room in Korea than what it is in the US. It is much more difficult.
So for you as an American, did you have any like surprising experiences where you would go into a meeting and you were not used to this culture and you'd be like, excuse me, boss, can I challenge you on this idea? Or other person, can I challenge you on this idea? And they're like, and people are like, whoa, I'm not used to this debate. Have you had that experience?
Yes. The first year, I was used to American style.
Sure.
Anybody says anything, I will say, no, I disagree. I think you're missing this point. So when you're telling someone you're missing a point, you didn't do it properly, people around me were freaking out.
Oh, wow.
So I could see the discomfort, and I'm looking around going, what's going on? But I finished my comment. And then they would tell me, you should never say that, never do that. It's like, why? He was wrong. If he was wrong, he's wrong. You know, I'm not telling him he's stupid. It's just he made a mistake.
Oh, that's interesting. So they equate being wrong with like an attack on their character.
Yeah.
Whereas you're saying everybody's wrong.
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
If you're human, you're going to be wrong, even if you're, a genius.
That is the group's job to identify problems or errors made by any one individual so that we can mutually help each other, right? Or the
responsibility.
Team, right? But if the individual that's speaking is a very senior guy, telling him he's wrong, or telling her she missed something or made a mistake, right, is something that apparently that's very difficult to do. And I was told multiple times, don't do that again. And I'm like, then how do we fix it if the person's wrong? And they'll say, that person is smart enough, they'll figure it out. Like, they're not gonna.
Interesting.
How do you figure that out? Then you figure out a way to solve it, after the meeting, not in front of everybody.
Interesting.
Right. So you don't insult or point out errors until after the meeting, and then you try to solve it, private discussion.
Yeah.
Not on stage.
Very interesting.
So apparently meetings are like a stage situation versus a meeting is actual people trying to work and solve problems. It's a very different situation.
Yeah.
This really highlights one of the deeper cultural layers you don't see at first glance. So what is it like working in Korea? Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. But one thing is for sure, Korean work culture is definitely changing. The stereotypes are definitely still valid, but maybe things are changing towards more of a direction of work-life balance. Anyway, I hope this video sheds some light on what it's like working in Korea, especially as a foreigner. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you enjoy working here? Have you ever worked abroad? Also, if you're currently studying English, I highly recommend you join my channel membership. You can see scripts for all the videos with both English and Korean for you to follow along while you're watching the videos and for you to study English with. Click the membership link down below to learn more. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Once again, I'm Sean, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.